Hello, Mars. Mars, this is Edward R. Sparrow in New York. Are you there? Hello, Mars.
Sram 10 Alp. Sram 10 Alp.
Sram 10 Alp?
On December 27, 1949, Project Saucer went out of existence. The flying saucers, however, refused to follow the project into limbo.
When, Croy? When, Croy?
When Croy?
And now back to Walter Kiernan. I wanted to point out another sighting, however, of a UFO by a research engineer of the Air Force Missile Development Center near Alamo at about that same time.
What day was that again?
This was on November 4th, the following day.
Last November.
Yes, last November. Stokes, this research engineer, had seen a huge elliptically shaped object which appeared between the center and White Sands. As it passed near the highway he was on, it had cut out his radio, stopped his engine, and those of this UFO at about 500-foot diameter, which is a pretty big ship. And he said as it went by at its lowest point, he could feel a wave of heat. Now, how would you explain this? The same way? Nervous foot?
Well, now, in these cases, you're helpless until you can go there and interrogate the people. You have to rely on your sources of information. I don't know what the source is in this case. I have to rely on the fact that whenever this happens, the Air Force sends its officers there to interrogate the people. And they've spent, I guess, millions of dollars by now interrogating everyone who's claimed to have seen anything like this. And I think any reasonable person has to accept the statements of the administration through the Air Force that after analyzing all these cases, they don't believe there are any extraterrestrial phenomena involved. If one doesn't accept this explanation, then one has to assume that the Air Force is committing perjury.
We're just flipping the pages looking for the saucer again.
Yes. Now, I know the Air Force has made a complete hash of the flying saucer investigation in the early days. Yes. Now, I know the Air Force didn't know what was going on, and they went every which way. But I think that now the matter has been resolved.
Major Aho.
Regarding this discussion of military personnel and what the Air Force is doing, etc., I'm aware that there are a number of things about this New Mexico situation that have not come altogether to light. Another person, upon retirement from the military service, Vice Admiral Hillenkoetter, former Director of Central Intelligence, and certainly here is a man that should know.
On the other hand, all the evidence indicated that the reports of unidentified flying objects could be accounted for under three major headings.
Why did Vice Admiral Hillenkoetter become a director of NICAP?
1. Misinterpretation of various conventional objects.
The organization that Major Donald Kehoe directs in Washington, D.C.
2. A mild form of hysteria.
Is that a question?
Yes.
Do you know the answer to it?
3. Or simple hoaxes.
Well, I feel that I do. He also has made a statement that these objects are real and that the American public should be informed about it.
You know, one thing, Major Aho, this may be a very stupid question, and when you do this 7 nights during the week, you're bound to hit a few stupid ones. Do you believe in some of the contact stories? And I'm not going to ask you which ones now.
Let's put it this way, John. It's very difficult for me to put myself in a position to say, well, I will support this one or I will.
No, I don't. I'm not going to ask you that. This is not a trick question.
Yes.
Do you believe that flying saucers with Venusians or Martians have landed someplace in the States here, and that some of the citizens of the United States have spoken to these people and even possibly have had a ride in a saucer?
I would like to summarize the situation in this manner, that all through history, mankind has been very, very stubborn about accepting any kind of change or any new idea. I don't care what it is.
Major Aho, pardon me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wonder if you could answer that question a moment. Because we're going to be here for a long while, but I'd just like to have an answer to that question. Should I repeat it?
No, I know what your question is, but I would like to include with the possibility that contacts have been established.
Well, it's strictly a possibility. It isn't a fact in your mind.
No, it's a definite possibility.
It's a possibility in mine. I think it's a possibility in any intelligent man's mind.
And the fact that we have had thousands of sighting reports coming in from all over the world, and these statements that these objects are intelligently controlled, and the statement that Mr. Clark made that there's, in his belief, that we may have been visited before, then I don't think that we should just cancel this thing out and say that for some reason, without any definite logic or investigation, we have to cancel out these sighting reports. I think that they are part of the evidence. And when you begin to put the whole picture together, the thousands of sighting reports, the radar reports, the photographs that have been taken, and there are hundreds of photographs available in color, in moving pictures, and I would say that the military services of the world have thousands, running perhaps into the hundreds of thousands of photographs. If we put all of this together, and then we put these contact stories together and examine them, examine the witnesses, the report they witnessed these contacts taking place, we may have an intelligent program, something to go by.
Major Aho, there's only one brief comment I'd like to make. And that is, it would seem to me that if our government had as much knowledge about these things as we seem to have around this table here 7 nights during the week, I don't know what they're fooling around at Cape Canaveral tonight, down in Florida, when it would be just a matter, I would rather stall a little while and say, well, look, maybe we can schmooze with one of these Venusians or Martians. Maybe it'll be next week, maybe it'll be a month from now, and we'll make a deal, and we'll get, the inside, and it'll make Sputnik look like a large nothing.
Yeah, I think Major has really proved my point beautifully. If there are thousands of reports of contacts, that proves practically conclusively that contacts do not occur. If there are only 2 or 3 reports of contacts, those might be real. But if thousands of people report them and they're never proved, that proves that whatever they're reporting has some other explanation.
I'm rather of the opinion myself that if we're going to grow, we're going to have to grow ourselves.
Another UFO!
Thanks, Mr. Walker. Well, that could explain things, but so far, anyhow, no one has been able to read the writing on any of these flying saucers, if there is any writing on them, if there are any saucers. Anyhow, ABC decided that if there are saucers flying around in the ether, why not send somebody up to look around to see just what they could see? So correspondent Bob Macall of American affiliate WSMJ has been cruising around in the skies over Youngstown, Ohio, on the lookout for flying saucers. Have you seen any of them up there, Bob?
No, not yet. We've been cruising at about 3,000 feet over the northeast part of the city for the last half hour. We're flying in the approximate area where some Youngstowners have seen these flying saucers. Youngstown Airways has placed at our disposal the latest post-war type Beechcraft Bonanza monoplane, which gives us exceptional visibility here tonight. We're almost completely surrounded by glass up here in the cabin. Right beside me at the controls is Forrest Beckett. In the rear seat, George Reese, aviation and industrial editor of the Youngstown Vindicator. It's a beautiful night for flying here. It's clear. Certainly there must be 1 million stars overhead. What with the stars and the moon and the steel mills thousands below lighting up the sky, we should surely be able to see a flying disc. A strange phenomena, very much like these flying discs that we've been hearing so much about. These are now known as the Bessemer comets. It was discovered that these comets were caused by the light of the huge Bessemer converters reflecting against the film of moisture in the upper sky. Flying saucers have actually been seen by 3 Youngstowners. City Patrolman George Maxim declared he saw 9 round objects sailing at high speed from south to north about 3 a.m. one night last May while he was on his beat on East Front Street in Youngstown. Maxim described the objects as rolling hoops or balloons moving at about 300 to 400 feet in the air. He said they resembled balloons used by meteorologists and were directly in line, one behind the other. The patrolman said he watched them until they moved out of sight to the north. Mr. and Mrs. Walter Thompson of Youngstown reported seeing a luminous round object as they sat on their porch at about 8:30 p.m. Saturday. Johnson said his hobby is watching shooting stars, and he was certain that this object, which he said was clear-cut all around with no fiery tail, could not have been the meteor. He said it floated slowly at a 45-degree angle toward the Earth and disappeared to the northeast. Now, back to Walter Kiernan.
It has been suggested that what people actually have been seeing is the result of some of our own secret experiments, guided missiles or new types of planes or flying weapons. This is emphatically not the case. None of the three military departments nor any other agency in government is conducting experiments, classified or otherwise, with disc-shaped flying objects which could be a basis for the reported phenomenon.
Thanks, Bob Mackall. Sorry you didn't see one tonight, but sounded like you had a little interference from one.
On December 27, 1949, Project Saucer went out of existence. The flying saucers, however, refused to follow the project into limbo. Just possibly one of the reasons behind the stubbornness of the saucers to accept the mantle of oblivion was an article that appeared in True magazine, just about the time Project Saucer was abandoned.
Such a thing that from this visitation, this touch-and-go business, and touch-and-go landings, and the sightings and so forth, are merely to arouse our curiosity, so we will learn that there is something bigger, something greater in the universe.
That they're sort of playing a game with us?
That's right, showing us that
These are
they exist.
matured, intelligent people that are far superior to us as far as intelligence is concerned, and they're running these things around these saucers just
to show us that there is something that we can investigate and learn about.
Is this a display of love for your fellow man?
A display of a natural law that if you're going to grow, every person has to make an individual effort to do that growing.
Are you talking about individuals now, Major?
I'm talking
about nations.
I'm talking about individuals, and from individuals it becomes families, and from families it becomes communities, and from communities, nations, and an international community.
Right here on this planet, Major Aho, it seems to me that I have heard from time to time that it's been suggested that we should exchange ideas. In other words, the Russians should give us all of the facts about Sputniks, and we should give them all the facts about things that we know. And if we could do this, if we could exchange ideas and knowledge that we may have accumulated, we possibly wouldn't have wars. At least I've read this someplace, I know. If this is true, why is it that these super intellects who are coming around in these saucers just playing games with us, why don't they come down and give us the facts, just say, look, fellas, the whole thing that you're doing here is completely obsolete. These little toys that you have, they look like children's kites that you call jet planes and things like that. Why don't they help it?
Well, perhaps, John, it will come to that point. I think that...
why is the great delay? This has been going on for over 2,000 or 4,000, I don't know how many thousands of years. Why is it taking so long before they're going to be kind enough as big brothers to come down and help the stupid people?
Well, let's hang the sign right on man's own ignorance, his inability to examine new things with an open mind.
Looking for flying saucers is a lot like looking for God. We have a few arrogant people who think they know where to begin, and then the rest of us have no idea.
It had previously been shown pretty conclusively that the number of sighting reports over a period of months usually followed closely the amount of publicity given to flying saucer observations. A lot of stories, a lot of sightings. Few stories, few sightings. Psychologists call this mass suggestion.
Well, interest in the flying saucers is not confined to our own shores. The British have a couple of theories as to what we're seeing, and here, transcribed, is what Professor A.M. Lowe, president of the British Institute of Engineering, says, direct from London.
Professor Lowe, no doubt you have been reading reports of the so-called flying saucers seen over America. As a leading British scientist, what's your opinion of them?
Well, I must say that, in my opinion, it must be due to mass hysteria. I know you've got to be very careful nowadays. What with war atom bombs, people feeling rather tired, and excitements of that kind, rockets, and so on. People like to believe things. And don't forget this. Everybody likes to say, I saw it. They think it's rather clever. Do you think it might be an optical illusion? No, I don't. I don't think so.
But to return to the True magazine article printed in December of 1949.
Do you think there's any chance at all that these flying saucers might be man-made objects of some kind? I think it's very unlikely.
Some percentage of the new wave of flying saucer reports can certainly be chalked off to mass suggestion. But again, as in the first reports, there remained that same unexplained percentage of reliable, trained observers who claim to have seen some object or objects wheeling, whirling, zooming, slicing, or hovering in the sky.
I think it's very unlikely. There is just the rather wild chance that someone is experimenting with a new kind of radar foxing device. You will remember the radar camouflage which were used in the war, made of metallized paper. Well, if you imagine a rocket fired 200 miles high and discharging these saucers of some kind of metal.
In order to check the whole question of design, to find out whether or not a saucer-like object such as the one described by Dr. Hunter could maintain itself in flight, according to the basic laws of aerodynamics, we call for the opinion of one of the nation's outstanding aeronautical engineers. Hall Hibbard is Vice President and Chief Engineer of Lockheed Aircraft. And here's what he has to say over the beep recording telephone.
Well, my feeling is that it is possible to build and fly something that looks like a saucer, just from a technical standpoint, but I do not believe that there is such a thing at this time.
Examine, what chance do we have to examine, Major A.O.?
We have the chance every day. I'm examining. Anyone else can do the same.
You're examining saucers?
I do not know of anything that would be considered in that category.
And the road is open for anyone that wants to do the same thing.
It just might be an experiment.
I know that many people are making statements about this subject that have not examined
I don't believe it.
very much of the evidence.
I'm very familiar with pretty much what's going on in the way of research and development, and I know of nothing that would be considered as flying saucers or flying saucer material. You can make something that looks like a saucer fly, if anybody would ever want to do it. But I do not believe it would be possible with our present knowledge to have them make the speeds and everything that everybody has been talking about.
The flying saucer story came back into sharp focus on Monday of the present week. On that day, the United States News and World Report, a national news magazine, and Henry J. Taylor, a radio commentator, both came out with flat statements that flying saucers actually exist. Mr. Taylor said that there are two or more different objects that have been cited and labeled flying saucers. One of these objects, the true flying saucer, according to Mr. Taylor, is a missile, round in shape, varying in size from 20 inches to 250 feet in diameter. Some are guided, others are not. The U.S. News and World Report article mentions nothing about these objects. The magazine, however, describes a jet-propelled aircraft of revolutionary design that agrees in some details with Mr. Taylor's second secret aircraft, a piloted plane capable of high speeds and high maneuverability. Both accounts agree that the present model stemmed directly from the XF-5U-1, the so-called flying pancake, a small edition of which was built and flown in 1942. Last night, we put a special recording line into the home of Mr. Charles H. Zimmerman of the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, the man who originally designed the XF-5U-1. We asked him about the plane, whether it ever actually flew.
This aircraft never flew. The official designation of the aircraft was the XF-5U-1, which was to be a high-performance Navy fighter. However, a low-powered lightly loaded version of this craft, called the V-173, made a large number of successful flights. I conceived the original idea for this craft back in 1933.
As a top plane designer, we asked Mr. Zimmerman to give us his opinion as to whether or not a plane could be built that could hover like a helicopter, then take off at almost supersonic speeds. He said,
"It would be possible, using modern turboprop engines, to build a machine of this type which would be capable of hovering and of also flying at all forward speeds up to possibly 550 or 600 miles per hour.
To follow through on the problem of whether or not disc-shaped objects could actually fly, we got in touch with Mr. David C. Prince, Vice President of the General Electric Company and Chief of its General Engineering and Consulting Laboratory. Mr. Prince was having no part of flying saucers.
My thought is simply that the ability of some people to kid themselves is extraordinary. For instance, the effect of searchlights on clouds has been taken to be flying discs. Even radar evidence is not conclusive here, because rain in the clouds would show up on a radar screen. The only saucer-shaped aircraft which we know has flown, and that only a few times, is a propeller-powered disc developed by NACA. As a matter of fact, a cigar-shaped craft with a single revolving wing, jet-powered, could be faster and certainly would be much more maneuverable. In flight, this plane might look like a disc because of the halo created by its rapidly revolving wing. Such a craft would have flight characteristics similar to a hummingbird's.
Late this afternoon, we tried to tote up the score. On one desk, we had a pile of clippings, news reports, recordings of eyewitness accounts of flying saucer observations. We had the Taylor broadcast, the U.S. News and World Report article. On another desk, we had our Project Saucer report, the transcripts of our conversations with leading scientists and engineers, who, to use a gentle phrase, discounted the possibility of any such thing as a flying saucer. On that desk, too, was the news ticker dispatch from the United States submarine base at Key West, Florida, a dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects.
Like it's mass hysteria, eh? I do. I always remember going to a spiritualistic film, and I found that if I said, "Look at that lovely blue light," everybody else saw it too, although I saw absolutely nothing. In other words, you really don't expect to see a flying saucer come down in Piccadilly Circus here in London, eh? No, I wish to goodness I could, I'm sure. Well, yeah, Ross would be quite surprised. I should be delighted. How was that? The only place I've been about them so far is in Brighton. And, of course, Brighton, well, it's such a charming place, you might see almost anything there. And another man, by the way, said that he saw one of them flying so high that he didn't know whether it was a house, an aeroplane, or the top of a ginger beer bottle. Now, I think he was very lucky. But we don't have anything quite so strong as that over here. I say. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Lowe. This is Frederick B. Arthur in London.
And they discarded without any examination, said, well, this is all Tommy Rock.
Well, Major Aho, in other words, when you say that they're giving us a chance and they have for the past 2,000 or 5,000 years, gave us the opportunity of examining these things, do you mean that they've just been flying around and that's the extent of the examination that they've permitted us to make? In other words, they haven't actually, or are they landing saucers here that I can go over tomorrow afternoon and take a peek at?
I think that it'll, when we begin to understand more of the picture, that it will tie in with the development of the Earth or greater technology, the fact that we have become airborne, the fact that we are thinking about going out into space ourselves. Psychologically, now is the time where a man might best understand that there might be life on other planets already, and that he will, when he reaches out into space, he will begin to meet some of that life. But it is obvious to me that the state of conditions on this planet, that if one of these ships and a superior technology fell into the hands of any nation on the earth that is involved in this Cold War business, we would want to be.
This is a news bulletin from Radio America. A Russian has become the world's first spaceman. For a direct report, we take you now to our correspondent in Russia, Igor Migor. This is Igor Migor in Moscow. Major Yuri Gagarin, the world's first spaceman, is here with me right now. Major, will you please tell an anxious world the most impressive thing you saw while orbiting around the Earth? Please, sir, tell us what that means in English.
Blue moon.
Major, this historic space trip makes you Russia's greatest hero. How do you feel about it?
I don't know what to do. I feel so helpless.
Yuri, during your lonely, nightmarish journey, who did you think about?
The worst person I know.
Major, when a meteor crossed your path and you almost collided with it, what was your first reaction? Yuri, during your tiring journey, did you have anything to do or anything to keep you busy?
Just 100 pounds of clay.
Major, while you were orbiting the Earth, you had a shortwave conversation with your wife. What were her first words? Major Gagarin, to the entire world, you are a hero. Already a mountain is named after you. What message do you have for the world? I'm sorry, Major. You're going to have to repeat that in English. I understand it has something to do with your future plans. Can you tell us exactly what you intend to do next? And finally, Major Gagarin, you've been kissed and embraced by Premier Khrushchev himself. All Russia stands at your feet. But if you could do one thing, just one thing, what would you do?
Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist. We tried to add it all up. We admit that now, as before we started our case, we have no opinion. The figures just don't add up. So we went to the public. We went to the man and the woman on the street to see how they were reacting to this barrage of positive sightings and just as positive denials. Sorted out the points of agreement and disagreement. Among those who claim to have seen flying saucers, here is what we found. Nearly all these observers are in agreement on the color of the objects. It's a metallic color, they say, something like aluminum or silver. Almost everybody agrees the objects are generally disc-shaped, but with wide variations, sometimes balloon-like or resembling a giant rubber ball. Still others describe them as elongated cigar-shaped things. Speed of the saucers has been estimated at from 0 to 1,200 miles an hour. And when we get into the question of maneuverability, the observers seem not to be able to find the precise or adequate words. They say that the saucers hover, accelerate, and decelerate rapidly. They say that some of the objects flutter, oscillate, drift, whirl, or float. There seems to be no fixed pattern of flight in cases where more than one or two discs have been reported. But several persons have said that in group flights, one of the discs seems to be of a distinct color, indicating, possibly, that this off-colored disc was the monitor or the control disc for the others. A small percentage of the observers said the discs bore light, and in 5 cases, at points as far apart as Alabama and California, the viewers said the discs suddenly disappeared in flight. But when we get around to estimating altitudes at which the objects were sighted, we find that some observers say they saw them at 250 feet. Others guessed the discs were at 40,000 feet in the sky. While one observer estimated the number of discs seen at 100, nearly all thought the number was less than 10. And about half those who claimed to have seen the objects said they saw only single saucers. Well, these are the things men and women in various parts of the United States say they have seen in the sky. Men of science and high government officials cast a skeptical eye at these reported sightings of celestial phenomena. So far, in the course of this broadcast, there have been no reliable reports of the sighting of any new flying saucers.
And again, it comes right down to the same thing, that we have greater weapons of destruction. We have greater capabilities of delivering greater destructive power and so forth in warfare. And until man can overcome warfare, why, a lot of these things are just, they're just taken down rather than up.
This is an interesting point that I've often thought about.
Now back to New York.
Well, thanks, Professor. One nice thing about it, though, if a Britisher wants to see the Loch Ness Monster, he has to go to Loch Ness. But here you can sit right on your front porch, wherever you happen to be, and you sit as good a chance of seeing a flying saucer as the next fellow. Well, there you have it. But what have you got? Undoubtedly, there is something to the story of the flying saucers, whatever they are. Fellow in his cups might be a poor witness to a flying saucer, but when sober, serious citizens around the country look into the skies and see a something, it can't be dismissed as eye strain or eye watch. I haven't seen a flying saucer, but I'm going up on the roof now. There's a telescope there. If I can't see a flying saucer, I'll settle for Venus, any Venus. Mr. Griffith, will you bring us out of here?
Sure will, Walter. The Search for the Flying Saucers was produced by our Special Events Department. Directed by Joe Graham. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Frankly, in order to check the whole question of design, find out whether or not a saucer-like object such as one described by Dr. Peter could maintain itself in flight,
I stopped to see a weeping willow crying on his pillow. Maybe he's crying for me.
Hello, Mr. Kenneth Arnold?
That's right.
This is Long John from WOR, sir. I'm very happy to have this opportunity of talking with you. I'm sorry, though, that you weren't able to join us on the program. But I was wondering, did you hear any of the program that we had on last night in reference to the Armstrong Circle Theater program?
I did, Long John. In fact, I stayed up the entire night to hear the entire program.
I go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just hoping you may be somewhere walking after midnight.
You might